and I can assure you all that you are in for a huge treat tonight. Lee Child.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for that very sweet and generous introduction, because in my community, Nancy Pearl is a legend. She really is. So that is, I would say that is the high point of my year so far. And I don't say that lightly, because it's been a great year for me, actually, for hanging out with legends. I've been hanging out with movie stars because one of my books is being made into a movie. And 3 weeks ago, I got an invitation to go to a reception with President Obama. And so I did. And did anybody here vote for him last time? Yeah? Good. Well, what you want to do is do it one more time, all right? He was... he was a terrific guy, and I had a very, very enjoyable afternoon. But even so, the Nancy Pearl thing probably means a little more. And I actually had another invitation that I will tell you about in a moment. But first of all, I'm going to introduce myself by just letting you know how I got from there to here and how everything turned out. And I'm going to do so by starting with a question that we get asked a lot. We get asked certain stock questions a lot. In my case, one of them I probably won't be asked anymore, because one of the big questions for me for the last 15 years is, who should play Reacher in the movie? And we have an answer to that now. And so that question probably won't be asked anymore. But then you get questions like, where do you get your ideas? And that's an easy question to answer. You just get them online. When you become a writer, part of the ritual is you get issued with this special password to Ideas R Us. And so you get them the same way as I get my shirt or anything else. You just mail order it. But one of the questions that, again, we get asked a lot is, when did you first know you wanted to be a writer? And some people say, when they were 7. There's a lot of people who have their bottom drawer is full of exercise books with novels written at the age of 7. And you get into a sort of inflation thing. Other people say, no, I wanted to be a writer when I was 5. And my friend Harlan Coben he says he wanted to be a writer while he was still a fetus. And my answer to that is, I don't want to be a writer. I never wanted to be a writer. I still do not want to be a writer. What I wanted to be always was an entertainer. And my first plan A, actually, the very first plan I had, was to join the Beatles. Which was a great plan, in my opinion. It only had 3 significant drawbacks. First of all, they had no vacancies. Second of all, I was 9 years old. And third of all, I had no musical talent whatsoever. But I was in love and seduced by what I saw as the joy in an audience, the joy on an audience's face. And you saw that everywhere. I first saw it before the Beatles. I saw it at my elementary school, which was just a little ways east of here, about 6,000 miles east, in Birmingham, England. And this elementary school I went to was a very rigorous school, and like a lot of county schools were back then. They taught you to read, they taught you to write, they taught you to do arithmetic, and that was it. And except that we had a principal, what we call the headmistress. Her name was Maisie Lister, and she was a fanatic for the musical theatre. So twice a year, at Christmas and in the summer, they would put on a show, which was basically just random show tunes stitched together with the most ludicrous plot. And of course, the parents would show up, and it was really pretty nice. I mean, it was a fairly grim place. It was a grim, grey inner-city school, but the lights were on. There was, you know what they say, the smell of the crowd and the roar of the grease paint and all that kind of stuff. And it was all. And I went, and I wasn't so much looking at what was on stage. I was looking at the faces in the audience, just this beaming happiness, the joy of it all. And the kids on stage seemed to be having such a great time too. So I wanted to do that. So I tried out for the next show, and they said, okay. They gave me a piece of paper and said, sing this song. And up until that point, I didn't understand that I couldn't sing. And so I had that really formative experience. I was standing there singing this song, watching the teachers' faces kind of getting, like, you know, more and more embarrassed. And I thought, why are they looking like that? And then I understood I can't sing. So, and that was my problem. I could not do anything stage-worthy. I couldn't sing, I couldn't act, I can't dance, I can't tell jokes. There's nothing I can do on stage. So I took the next best thing, which was to go backstage. And that was where I spent the next many years, including at high school and vacation jobs and things like that. I was backstage in the theater, and I loved that, and I still love that. I'm a total sucker for a movie like Shakespeare in Love. You know that movie? A putting on the show movie. I love that because the feel, the conspiratorial feel of everybody putting on the show and the audience loving it is so cool. And the theater was good to me. I had a great time. I worked as a 17-year-old. I worked with Laurence Olivier, and it was thoroughly enjoyable. Except you were out of work a lot in the theater, and when you're not out of work, you're not earning very much money. So I did what I thought was the smart thing, is I went into television, which is the same sort of thing, entertainment, backstage work, but they had unions and you earned a lot of money, and I thought, this is cool. So I went and got that job, and I had that job for 18 years. I worked at Granada Television in Manchester, England, and it was, at that time, a fabulous drama producer. We made, in the time I was there, we made Brideshead Revisited, Jewel in the Crown, Prime Suspect, Cracker, just one thing after another, and a fantastic documentary strand as well. It was a wonderful place to work, and I loved every minute of it, and I would still be there, except one day my boss said something to me that made it just impossible for me to continue there. He said, "You're fired." Which was a severe blow in a way, because I was 39 years old, very nearly 40, and I had a daughter aged 15, and I had a wife and a mortgage and a credit card and a car loan and all that kind of stuff. And to be out of work at the age of 39 is not great. But on the other hand, I did sense it is your last chance. You know, you're old enough that you've got some skills and some experiences and some abilities and some habits. You're no longer the idiot you were when you were 20. And it's the kind of your last chance to change. The second half of your working life can be something different. So my problem then was, all right, but what? Because my skills were extremely highly developed, but they were completely germane to only one thing, which was the job I'd just been fired from. So I had no obviously marketable skills, and I thought, so what can I do? And my number one ambition was to stay broadly speaking in the world of entertainment. What could I do that would keep me in the world of entertainment? And one day I thought, I know, I'll write a book. I've read some, how hard can it be? And so I did. I wrote a book, and at that time I thought, because I figured that editors working at the publishing house, publishers' editors, were broadly speaking probably like TV producers. They're the people you've got to sell the concept to. And I thought, well, I've been getting away with murder with these guys for a while, so I can get a couple of years ahead of publishing, surely. And I thought maybe a couple of years, and then I would have to find another job. But those couple of years have now turned into almost 17. The book that comes out in September will be the 17th book. So it worked out pretty well. And if you want to figure out why it worked out pretty well, this is where the rubber meets the road. And I said, I've read some. Actually, I'd read tens of thousands of books. And the reason why is initially because I have an elder brother, and when he started at school, I was still too young to go to school, and I was extremely annoyed about that. Whatever he was doing, I wanted to be doing. So he went off to school, and he came back, and he was doing things. He could write and he could read, and that annoyed the hell out of me, and I thought, right, I'm going to do that too. And so I largely taught myself to read and write by kind of seeing how he was doing it and eavesdropping as my mother was helping him. Not that he really needed help. My elder brother is exceptionally smart. He's a nuclear scientist. But my parents were very, very aspirational, and they were keen to, that he should do very well. So he would come home from school, and my mother would give him extra help, and I would eavesdrop and try and figure it out for myself. And I did actually teach myself to read, and almost taught myself to write. But doing it secondhand was kind of difficult because you didn't get that certain things were required and certain things weren't. Like the capital E. Do you know what a capital E looks like? It has a bar at the top, a bar at the bottom, and one bar in the middle. And for some reason, I thought the number of bars you put in the middle was sort of discretionary. And I would do my capital E's with about 1,000 bars in there. It looked like a millipede that had been cut lengthwise. But apart from small snafus like that, I did quite well. And I actually remember reading my first sentence successfully off the back of my father's newspaper at the breakfast table. And back then, the paper he took had the financial news on the back. Now, most papers have sport on the back, but it was financial news. And it was clearly a stock market report because it said, London closes down. And I didn't know anything about the stock market, but I understood those words. And because we had plenty of things closing down, a store would close down. You would walk, it's what you call a going out of business sale. They called them closing down sales. And so that you would walk, see them selling all the stuff, and then the next day the storefront is all boarded up, it's closed down. But I couldn't understand how could London close down? Where would all the people go? Where would they live? What would they do? So reading introduced mystery right from the start for me. And like I said, our family was intensely aspirational, and I wouldn't want you to think that I was any worse off than anybody else, because I absolutely was not. I was not poor, I was not disadvantaged in any way. The point is, back then, everybody was poor, and everybody was disadvantaged. I was no worse than anybody else, and I always had food to eat, and I always had leather shoes, which was very important in our family, because the one marker between being respectable and not was, did your kids wear leather shoes or plastic shoes? And we always had leather shoes, so we were fine, except we had no money for anything, especially not books, but we had a library. And our library was not at all glamorous like the Kings County system. I mean, I'm totally knocked out by what I've seen of libraries in America, and especially here. Our library was in a Nissen hut, which is what you guys call a Quonset hut, left over from World War II on a bomb site. A church had been bombed, and the rubble had been bulldozed into what we called a red wreck, a recreation ground that was colored red because it was crushed brick. And so there was this patch of crushed brick with a Nissen hut sitting on it, and that was our library. And it had probably about 300 or 400 books in it. And some of those were kids' books, most of them were adult books. And by the time I was about 7 or 8, I'd read every book in the library. And then my mother did one thing, which to her was probably just routine mothering, but incredibly significant to me. She got us library cards for the next municipality. If you crossed the bridge over the canal, there was another library that was much bigger and had much more books. And we would go there, and we had a kind of Chicago politics system as far as our library cards went. Every dead relative had a library card. At one point, our dog had a library card because you could get a certain maximum number of books per card, and there were 4 boys in the family, 2 parents, and we read a lot. So we needed dozens of books every week, so we would scam it any way we could. If a relative came to visit, we would take them to sign them up for a library card. And then they would go home, but their legacy lived on behind them. We had their library card, and we read and read and read. So by the time that I had lost my job, and I was thinking of writing a book. I had read a fantastic amount, and that is what I always say to any writer is, what can you do to prepare to be a writer? There's nothing you can do except read. And if you are talking to me, if you're already 30 or 40 years old and you haven't been reading all your life, then it's too late. Give it up. Reading is the only thing you can do, and I did it. And I say that, you see, the chances are I might well not have been a writer if they hadn't fired me from my job, which I hasten to point out was due to no misdemeanor on my part. It was just corporate restructuring, like things are. We had a new stockholders who wanted more profit, and the way to get more profit was to fire all the boring old people that had been there for a long time and had high salaries and benefits and pensions and all that kind of stuff. So it's not like I was stealing from them or, in some way negligent. But so if they hadn't have done that, suppose they'd said, yeah, we want to keep this guy, I would still be there. I wouldn't be a writer, but I would still have benefited from all that reading, in as much as everything I know, not just how to be a writer, but everything I know comes from reading in that library, because that elementary school, like I said, it taught you reading, writing, and arithmetic, and nothing else. There was no other lessons at all. It seems bizarre looking back on it, but there was no history, no geography, no nothing. It was just those basic skills. High school for me was fine. I got a scholarship to a high school that is 224 years older than the United States. And that had its own library. And so I did fine there, but those formative, vital years, it was all about the little old library in the Nissen hut and then the bigger library across the canal. And I have to mention all of that because we get notes for these things, We have publicists who give us the schedule, the whole thing, some of it routine, like the car will pick you up at 3:30, the plane is at 6:15, the hotel is such and such. We have all those notes, and then they always put in a little note about the event itself, and it said, mention why libraries are important to you. Because, this is sort of... So not only have I mentioned, but I can actually prove to you. I can prove to you how libraries are important to me. Because remember at the beginning I said I had another invitation. The invitation was to a reception with the Queen of England and Princess Kate. You know her? Heard of her? It was to do with the fact that she was kicking off the Diamond Jubilee tour, and it was actually going to be at a university where I know the guy who is the Vice Chancellor, and he keeps in very close touch with me because he wants donations, and he wants scholarship money basically, and I gave him some last year. So he said he had this event with the Queen of England and Princess Kate, or Catherine, or whatever she calls herself, the Duchess of Cambridge, the one that married the elder boy. And she said, he said, we're having this reception, we'd love you to come, will you come? Here's the problem, it was last night. It was Friday night. And so I said, no, I won't. And he said, why not? And I said, because I have to be in Seattle Saturday night, and I can't get there any other way. And he said, well, can't you blow that off? And I said, certainly not. I'm less of a saint than it disappears, because actually I hate the royal family. I would not have gone anyway. I think it's a terrible system, and here's what I don't understand about you Americans. You had the common sense to overthrow the system. Remember that? 1776 and all of that? You didn't like it then, right? Why do you like it now? Can you explain that to me? I mean, this is a terrible system and they're awful people. But having said that, if I had nothing else to do, I might have gone. But even if I had liked him, I wouldn't have gone, because I think, first of all, if I've already said, yes, I'll come here, and I I'm not going to back out of that, but honestly I do believe that it is far more important. See, that was essentially a university. It wouldn't be so much like benefiting the royal family, what do they care, but it would have been, this was about the university, and universities are very important, but nobody gets to university unless they've first been to the library when they're 3 or 4 years old. And so this is much more important. This is so fundamental. And, you know, people say to me, oh, they expect me to know things, and they say, what do you think about ebooks? And I say, you know, the only honest answer about ebooks is we don't know. What do we think about the future of libraries? And the only honest answer to that is we don't know. We don't know what form the future of libraries will take. We don't know what people will need from them. We don't know what you'll be supplying. But it will be something, and it will be something very important. And so this is really where my heart is. Even if, I mean, to be honest, if President Obama had said again last night, why didn't you come for dinner? That would have given me a harder choice, all right? And if it had been like the Yankees saying, you know, why don't you come down to spring training and have a drink with the guys? That would have been a very hard choice. But I would have still come here because not only is this a magnificent, I mean, it's a breathtaking library system. For a kid whose first library was in a Quonset hut, to see this, and you know, Seattle Downtown Library is apparently nothing to do with you, right? And it is amazing as well. It's bizarre. You're a very bizarre little corner of the nation here with these libraries. I mean, what is it about, really? But I mean, it's a fabulous, magnificent thing, and I really congratulate you for obviously the passion and the commitment that has gone into forming it. And I'm completely aware that you understand it's a fantastic resource and that you're going to do the very best thing in the future. And so I guess what I would say is, for anybody who wants to be a writer, the best thing to do is to grow up here. Thank you very much.